Back at Shane's Rib Shack for a Thursday. Time to get the football in focus once again. Talk some more football this week. Got Joe Sirera with us to the news and record, and we would probably be losing our train of thought if we didn't mention last Monday's game and that quarterback we saw, John Lamont. Is he the best quarterback you've seen all year, or maybe the best player you've seen all season long?
His performance that night was as good as I've seen. 25 of 28 passing for nearly 300 yards, ran for 4 touchdowns. I mean, he was just impossible for Northern or a lot of teams that night to contain. It was a very strong performance.
I guess he's been playing quite a bit like that all year long, right? You said
and he was a good player last year too. I mean, I think he's improved even more, but he's got a great combination of size at about 6'2", 205, 210, and athletic ability, speed. He's got a good arm. A lot of people who've seen him this year are comparing him a little bit to maybe a slightly smaller version of James Summers. And in fact, East Carolina has gotten involved with him in the last 10 days or 14 days, thinking, hey, we're not going to be strictly a passing team. We want a quarterback who's a little more mobile. They haven't offered him yet, but they're talking about an official visit and thinking, hey, this kid could be James Summers too.
And he's verbally committed to Elon, right?
At this point, he is, yes. Yeah, he wants to play quarterback, and I can understand that based on what he did Monday night.
And with James Summers, is James Summers a starting quarterback on the collegiate level? I'm just wondering if he'll start this week, if that would change anything.
You can't bench a guy after the kind of performances he's had for the Pirates over there.
It's kind of be a great problem to have to decide who's going to be in. You can start Kemp and he doesn't perform well. It's like almost, here's your chance to show us what you can do. If you don't do it, we're not in trouble. We know James goes in, and sometimes it's like the guy, the basketball player likes to, not maybe but basketball, the guy sits on the bench, you got to watch the game, then goes in and sees what's happening and takes over, runs the show like the 6th man, so to speak. I guess in football it'd be like another 12th man. But James last week, the week before, I mean, he was unstoppable in many cases.
And he gives the defenses, when you're using 2 quarterbacks like that who are very different types of players, that many more things they've got to prepare for during the week. Everything gets a little bit shortchanged because you have to think about so many things. You know, he's a great guy to bring off the bench. I think you could bring Kemp off the bench. You could go either way, but as you say, great problem to have.
And looking forward to all the East Carolina games, giving me another reason to listen to or try to follow East Carolina football this year.
Yeah, and they've got some other players over there too. I believe he's out this week with Rocco Scarfone, who was a high school quarterback for much of his career, but also played some safety. He's a cornerback now for the Pirates and had been starting, and they always have some.
And they got the Jonathan White kid out of High Point Central playing some as well. They've had a number of kids in the past few years. What about this Northern Guilford team? Going back to them, we saw them on Monday night. They battled in that game. They were down, but one thing about it, they didn't let Eastern Alamance put them away. They kept scratching, fighting, got back in the game, had a very good 4th quarter on the comeback trail behind their quarterback. He came way back and brought those guys back. Mr. Timmons did an outstanding job.
Yeah, I mean, they had multiple opportunities, down 17 points, down 18 points, where some teams would have folded, would have just let it go. Johnny Roscoe coach teams don't do that. Those kids in that program don't play that way. They don't roll that way. And they made it interesting. They recovered that onside kick with about 25 seconds to go. The way Miles Timmons was throwing in the 4th quarter, who knows? You know, that's what they have to take away from that game and build on the fact that they finally got their offense going against a pretty good team, an unbeaten Eastern Alamance team, and try to build on that going forward.
And they had to find ways to get more people involved. Losing Tucker Horde as the game went on, Tristan Simmons got involved. I loved his stretch, trying to put that ball over, trying to break that plane, trying to get in. And you had the Ford Moser kid get involved, the receivers. Again, number 13, Max Maynard got involved. And I still can see that number 45, Scarlett, his name was, still recovering that onside. They pooched all night long, and they gave Northern great field position, 45-yard line on the average most of the night. They never kicked deep. I just wonder sometimes, would you be better just go and kick deep maybe once to see what happens?
Yeah, I mean, they were obviously trying to keep the ball away from C.J. Freeman. I've seen other teams do that. Western Alamance the week before I was over there at Elon for that game. They did something similar. And with Western, they were pooching everything because not only did they want to keep the ball away from Freeman, but that night Tucker Horde was still also a dangerous return guy until he suffered that ankle injury, which is really unfortunate for him. And he means so much to that team. Kick returner, defensive back, receiver, a smaller version of Thomas Hannigan of Northwest Guilford, just such a versatile athlete and a leader, and that hurt. But as you say, they needed to find other players, they needed to find other people they could get the ball to, and they did against Eastern
They did a good
Alamance.
job, and they should. You think now, maybe from the Northern standpoint, they played the tougher part of their schedule in a lot of ways. They have faced Western Alamance and Eastern Alamance. Probably they're thinking now is we need to win out, and we have a good chance to win out for the rest of the way.
They've got Eastern Guilford on
Next week,
next week on the 16th. That's probably the toughest game that they have left. And if
Great
they get
game
past
last
that,
year.
Oh yeah, I mean controversial ending on the
Absolutely.
2-point conversion pass, but that's probably the toughest game they have left. And yeah, that's the way they've got to be thinking. Yeah, they're 3-3 right now, but they're thinking we could finish 8-3.
What about the report card? Let's get to the report card now. We're kind of at the midterm segment of our season and headed to the conference play. Everybody is. By tomorrow night, they've all played conference games. What about the Dudley Panthers? How do you grade those guys?
A-, B+ if they had come back and found a way against Richmond County, 14-12 loss a Monday ago. They'd be an A, although
Absolutely.
they made a lot of mistakes in that game.
They did. They got some of their stuff got exposed a little bit too. I mean, Richmond County comes in and kind of cuts down some of the running game they'd had success with Young being stopped quite. When he hit Young a couple of times, and boy, if we had a video machine, we should. Boy, I don't know if I want to see that video. He got hit hard a couple of times in that game. It's crazy.
Richmond County is a proud football program like Dudley.
Oh, yeah.
They've had great success down there, and that was a huge game for them. That was kind of a statement game for them.
You wrote about it this week at your website. I'm sure it's up in the paper. Well, your website, but you had a good little one-on-one with Coach Davis and Simeon Gatlin, and both I think agreed that game was a good game in some ways. Simeon more maybe than Coach, because Coach would say it was good we got a loss, but the players, didn't get a loss. We're able to see some things we need to work on.
Wake-up call for sure. They both use that term, and because of the way the NCHSAA football seeding it goes, Dudley traditionally has only played 10 games. They played 11 this year. That's an endowment game. They can throw that game out when seeding time comes. A smart thing for Stephen Davis, the coach there, to get a test from them. They've got him next year too down there. They learned about their team, and that's something that they needed to do. A-, B+, kind of right on the line. I guess I'd give them an A-.
I gave them an A-. Page. How about Page? There was a 1-point difference in the two teams on the grading scale. It was Page lost 31-30, and Dudley lost 14-12. 1-point difference, 2-point difference. What about Page?
B+.
B+?
Yeah, I think there are some things that they need to improve a little bit on. They were not able to run the ball. I was at that East Forsyth game. They were not able to run the ball the way they wanted to in the second half. Some of that is injuries. Micah Gafford was banged up. Javon Leake has been banged up. That was a factor. I think their game with Dudley is going to be a great game to watch.
Do you feel like a lot of us do, myself, the three of us, me, myself, and I feel like this Will Jones guy is just so important in the team? It seems like the quarterbacks are so important, all these different teams. Hendon Hooker and Will Jones, they should make for a great battle, and you find out which one is a little bit ahead of the other that night.
Yeah, two great juniors, two kids with probably the two strongest passing arms around. The John Lamont kid obviously is a good passer, but I don't think he has the kind of arm strength that Hendon Hooker or Will Jones have. Both of those guys, that East Forsyth game, Will Jones threw a 41-yard touchdown pass to Miles Faison on a post where Faison had a defender right on his shoulder. Will Jones dropped it in there, and with the drop back on that, it was 50 yards in the air, and it was a dart. And he's got that kind of arm strength. He has thrown a number of balls this year. You've seen him do it rolling to his left, right hand, or stopping and throwing back. And normally high school quarterbacks can't get away with that. He's got the arm to do it. Hendon Hooker, a flick of that wrist, and you've got a spiral going 40, 50 yards if he wants it. I think where Will might have a little bit of an edge as a passer is their system gives him more opportunities to throw and develops him a little bit more in terms of reading defenses. The Dudley offense, much more ground-oriented. Hendon Hooker doesn't get quite as many opportunities to throw. So a game like Richmond County where they had to come back, he might be at a little bit of a disadvantage there. But both of those kids are great quarterbacks. They're both going to be playing at big-time programs on Saturdays in a year.
What about Southeast Guilford? I gave them an A-. I gave them an A- because they've got one loss in the record. Plus, every game they played has been on the road. No home games at all. That's tough.
Yeah, I think I'm in the B camp on them. They have not played as well the last few games. They've been winning. They've kind of been struggling a little bit to do it with Ragsdale, a few of their other games. The one loss that they had could have very easily been a win, though. The home game at Northwest Guilford, it was a game where Southeast gets stopped at the 12 at the end. There was a controversial play at the end of the first half, a pass that was called incomplete that looked like a completion and a fumble to just about anybody who saw it, and Northwest scored on the next play with 1.5 seconds to go. That's a different game if that call is different, but Fritz Hessenthaler always has a strong team, a team that's physical.
They do so much with that run. They're so dependent upon the run. That's what carries them down the road. Baldwin and McVay, huge 1-2 punch for them this year.
Two great running backs in that wing T offense. The one thing that impressed me about them in that Northwest game was at the end there, they got the ball back with less than 2 minutes to go and basically had to drive 90 yards, and they got almost all of it, and they did almost all of it throwing.
Was that Ryan Douglas, the freshman quarterback?
No, it was actually Tavares Best,
Yeah.
and what he did, the way they used their backs so well in that comeback, trying to drive the field, was rolling people out, rolling the quarterback and giving him a run-pass option, and having one of those backs fake to and then slipping out. And they were throwing to them on the run.
You know something, that's what Dudley does so well with Young. Young is almost like a receiver more than he is a runner, because every time you look up, how did that number 5 get so far deep down the field, that long pass back?
They run those wheel routes with him to perfection, because when the defense sees him go through and he doesn't have the ball, they just sort of forget about him.
Exactly. How about Northwest?
B minus. Quarterback play has been their bugaboo there. The one loss that they have at Northern, some of that was attributable to their quarterback play. A big part of it was C.J. Freeman just took over in the second half of that game, as he's capable of doing. But Jake Smith has been the starter, has had his good moments, has had his rough moments. Caleb Hommel, who was in a fight with him for the job before the season, same way. Good moments, bad moments. They've been kind of indecisive about that, and I've been hearing from a couple of people that Thomas Hennigan may get some Wildcat snaps this week and going forward.
Tell you, one play, baby. Let's go back one play. Might have been one of the plays of the week. C.J. Freeman at that quarterback spot as Wildcat ran it back 56 yards. The quarterback calls the penalty. Wow, that was a great play, a great play call. Without the penalty, would have been. That was a good run. Same thing they were doing in Northern the other night.
Yeah, and I think with Jared Rolfus, the Northwest coach, he's thinking, I've got Thomas Hennigan. I want to get him as many touches as I can. If the quarterback is struggling to get him the ball, we're just going to snap it to him
plus,
directly.
if you vary how you use the quarterback spot, it also keeps the team off guard. What are they going to do this time? They got Hennigan back there. We're going to defend him. Now we got Hummel back there. We've got Jake Smith back there. We got to defend 3 different guys now.
Yeah, and he's got
you got Trey Turner. You got the Cameron
Cloud,
the Cloud kid, outstanding
freshman.
Receivers too.
Kyle Finney, very strong running back, had a really nice game up at Reedsville a couple weeks ago. I mean, there's plenty of offensive talent there. One of the things that could be a key for them is their best two-way lineman, Jared Brayman, had been out since before the season opened. He's back now. He's not 100%, but he's going to play. And he's a big guy to run behind on the offensive line, and they can get him in for some reps on defense, too, in short yardage situations. Big body, strong kid, tough kid.
Need a few of those. How about looking at Southern Guilford? How do you grade them?
Kind of up and down. They obviously miss Reggie Gillespie. You can't replace a Reggie Gillespie. They've got some good athletes, some good skill position guys. Quarterback play has been a little bit up and down with Rayshawn Knight. Solid at times. Their losses have been close losses, and their tests are going to be Ashboro and Ledford in their conference.
Impressively, Amon Harris is kind of taking that running back spot as opposed to Nigel Thomas. Harris, I think, about 740 yards on the ground. Not bad at all for a kid who was not the regular running back coming in.
No, and they've got a lot of good players on defense. Garrett Blackburn.
You mentioned this guy in your preseason discussions because he had just moved back here, but that Kenyon Taylor is as good as anybody else seen with the end around and getting upfield. That's an outstanding athlete there.
And as a college defensive back right now, he's committed to ECU as a big cornerback. The trend.
I don't even think of him as defensive back. I just think of him as an offensive player. Right?
They look at his athletic ability and they think, we can make him, with all of the big receivers out there. Everybody's looking for big corners with ball skills.
How about DeAndre Overton? Definitely a receiver in college, or could he be a defensive player too?
I think a kid with the kind of hands that he has, you want to utilize those hands as much as you can. Could he be? Yes, but I think much more of a receiver.
What do you think about High Point Andrews' grade? They've had a good. They lost the game to Southwest. They could still win the High Point City Championship if they beat High Point Central. They could be the mythical High Point City champion.
They destroyed them. It was 48-6, I believe. I mean, always a little bit of an under the radar team in High Point and in the area. Went up to Reedsville and won 48-3. Beat High Point Central 48-6. I mean, they'll take on anybody. That lost to Southwest Guilford in their opener. You look back and you think, how did that happen? Part of it, I think, in that game, and this has happened to Andrews before, is they traditionally do not play that first week. The team that they're playing against, Southwest or High Point Central, whoever it is, has a game under their belt, and Andrews it takes that extra week to get ready, and I think that came back to bite them a little bit there. But they don't have a real challenge the rest of the way. I mean, I think very realistically they're going to be 10-1 going into the playoffs and a very high seed.
Well, that running game, they could go a long way too.
And teams don't see that as much anymore. I mean, that's one of the reasons Southeast Guilford is so effective. Why they're so effective.
And the crazy thing is, Southeast Guilford, and I guess Andrews both in similar ways, the quarterbacks are a big part. A lot of teams that you see the running game, but the quarterback's a big runner. For those two teams, they're not big runners.
No, and that's a lot of the wing T stuff that both of those teams run, and they tell what they're doing. They tell you, here's what we're going to come at you with. We're going to execute it and block it so well that we think you're not going to be able to stop it. And for the most part, they do.
Stop us.
It's great coaching, good athletes, and kids who know that system from the time they get there.
Sticking with the system, like Tommy Persley did at Northeast. He had that system down, stuck with it, wasn't going to veer away from it because it worked. You look outside the stadium, you walk in, you see all those championships.
20 straight playoff appearances, and most of those when it wasn't easy to get into the playoffs.
It was a crazy conference back in those days sometimes too. A lot of different conference. What about looking at Eastern Guilford?
B-. I would have had them higher if they hadn't got up to Moorhead and lost last week. If they
would have won that game going in the stretch, they're headed toward Northern. It would have been a great little ride going in.
They had that kind of run a little bit last year too. Their conference comes down to, over the last few years, what do you do against Eastern Alamance? What do you do against Western Alamance? What do you do against Northern Guilford? And they're going to have to beat one of those teams to take that next step up. Doug Robertson does a great job over there. Won a state championship at Reedsville. Hasn't forgotten how to coach.
Right.
He's a quality coach. Coaches line play very well both sides. That's his specialty. The problem they have is depth and injuries. They're a little bit banged up right now.
Exactly.
And he just doesn't have the numbers that some of the other
He's got like a 31-man roster. That's tough to go against, and you start getting injuries. It's tough.
He ends up in those cases having to bring up freshmen and sophomores from JV, and the way that people are trying to avoid dealing with the 8-quarter rule. Once they come up, that's it. They're not going back down again.
No, you're not playing games. You got to make your mind up where you're going to go there. I really like that Barr kid. I think he's injured now, but that Barr kid really looked good on the
Brian
plays
Barr,
I saw.
excellent athlete, and ran what Doug wanted to do very, very well.
What about Northern Guilford? I gave him a C+.
With their record, I think you kind of have to go that way, and that Page loss was just so resounding, so decisive. But I give them a heck of a lot of credit for the way that they've reinvented themselves. I said that a couple of times. I mean, they've been a big play, just high-scoring offense the last few years. Other than that comeback against Eastern Alamance, now they're a defensive team, a run-oriented team with Miles Timmons running that read option with C.J. Freeman. They've had to change what they do, somewhat because of injuries, somewhat because of all the players they lost to graduation. If they beat Eastern Guilford, as we were saying earlier, they could still be an 8-3 team and a very high seed for the playoffs.
They're improving now too. They're on the way back, like you say.
And he's got a lot of young kids on defense that are growing up, and he's talked about that often.
What about you look at High Point Central? Had to give those guys a D, at least a D at 2 and 4.
Yeah, when you've got Chavis Little and Jeffrey Wall and Cedric Irvin, young receiver who shows a lot of promise, and you're sitting at 2 and 4 at this point. They've got issues on defense. I think with Jameel Mack and some of the kids that they had last year on offense, the tendency was to overlook what talent they had on defense. That was a very, very talented defensive team, and they lost a lot of those guys to graduation. Tim, I'm drawing a blank on his last, Tim Ward, starting as a true freshman at Old Dominion as a defensive end and pass rusher. There was some talent on that defense, and they give up a lot of big plays. I was at the Dudley Jamboree before the season, and in a 20-minute segment against a very good Charlotte Vance team, they gave up 6 touchdowns in a 20-minute segment, and they were all 30-yard plus plays. They over-pursue a little bit. They gamble a little bit on defense. And in their conference with East Forsyth, Northwest Guilford, Glenn is a high-scoring team now. If you give up a lot of big plays, you're in trouble, and that's what they're looking at.
What about staying in that conference? What about Southwest Guilford? Another 2 and 4? Got to be at least another D here.
Yeah, the injury to Jaron Rainey really hurt them. Quarterback coach's son, sophomore. With Eric Rainey's system, you need a quarterback to run it, and that any hope they had of taking a step up this year when he got hurt is pretty much gone. It's a struggle for them in that league. That's a tough conference.
I gave Grimsley a D. I expect a little bit more out of Grimsley. We do every year, but they just can't seem to get that start going and keep that start going. They're at 2-4, and it's not a guaranteed win against Southern Alamance at home tomorrow night.
No, that's a pretty good. Well, it's a solid Southern Alamance team, and a team that Grimsley is going to have to play better than they've been playing to get the W there. They've got some talented players, but another team that gives up a lot of big plays. I saw them against East Forsyth, and Pat Neal, Grimsley coach, talked before the game about we want to make them earn their yards, don't give them quick drives, hang around into the late third, fourth quarter, and we've got a chance. They give up a 71-yard touchdown on a screen pass on the first play from scrimmage, and that was it. And that's kind of the way that their season has gone. It doesn't get any easier for them with the Metro because they're going to go to Page next week. They got to play Dudley. They got to play Southeast Guilford. They need that Southern Alamance win. Smith is a team that I think they could beat, but those two teams are pretty close.
What about Ragsdale? I gave them a D-. I hate to do that, Coach Tommy Norwood, but just the way things are going, I think they're 1-5 now, and they've struggled. And he's got one man, Dryas Drayton, pretty much carries a whole load. Other than him, I like the Bryce Craig kid. I love to watch that kid receive. Wish they could get in the ball more, but I understand they're not able to right now because of different limitations. But rough times for Ragsdale. I tell you what, I looked at that schedule ahead and talking about their conference, it could get even rougher.
Yeah, that league is a meat grinder for them. It's a meat grinder if you have defensive problems because there are a lot of teams. I mean, I compare that conference to the Big 12 where everybody can throw on you, everybody can score points, and you're not gonna win a defensive struggle. Spencer Turkin, good friend of ours who does the ESPN Triad radio broadcast, has been telling me that they have a quarterback who's become eligible, Eric Williams, who may be able to play this week. He was a transfer. He had to sit out a full year, and he might be a guy who could get some of those players, their playmakers, the ball a little bit better, and could make them a little bit more dangerous. But in that conference, Spencer's seen that young man practice and is raving about him. He could be a difference maker, but to have a kid have to step in who hasn't played a football game in a year and ask him to make that kind of difference, that might be a lot.
It'd be like Cobb stepped in last year in the same exact game. He was injured to start the season out at Cobb over at Northwest, and even him had a great year at the end after the games he played. He stepped in at Northwest the same game, same week last year, but even he couldn't turn it around last year.
They're in a little bit of a talent deficit compared to some of the other teams in that conference, and Tommy Norwood can coach as well as anybody, even without as much talent as some of the teams. They're going to play sound fundamental football. They're going to do things the right way, but it's tough in that conference.
What about Smith? D- there?
Yeah. I might have given them the D, and then they play a winless Cummings team and get beat. That's not a good sign.
You got to beat the teams that you have a good chance to beat.
And again, another team, it doesn't get any easier. You look at the rest of that Metro 4A schedule for them, and it's unpleasant.
What about Northeast? I gave Northeast a D because they're showing some improvement. They got the win the other evening, first win under new head coach Jason Lippard, and they're putting points on the board.
Yeah, that was the one of the things. I talked to Jason quite a bit before the season, watched them practice a number of times, and he's trying to change the culture from where it was the last couple of years where they struggled and doing it in a different way than what Tommy Pursley did. They're a spread, throw it around team now. They've got Gerald Simpson up there, transfer from Grimsley, and they've got a quarterback who can get the ball out to some people. I think Coach Lippert just needs to get his program established. That win last week was a huge step for that program, and I think going forward, they're a team that the way their schedule falls, they can get a couple more wins and build for next year.
I gave Western Guilford an F. I don't know what else you can do there.
Yeah.
They got a chance to win tomorrow night, their best chance of the year, possibly coming at North Forsyth.
Yeah, that's about it for them the rest of the way. They're still looking at some teams in the Mid-Piedmont 3A that are going to whip up on them.
Another team that might be a chance down the road too. Just thought about Central Davidson haven't won a game 0-7. Southern's going to probably annihilate them tomorrow night. But you got to be thinking right now. You got North Forsyth. You got to get that first win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, a coach coming in and trying to put his stamp on the program. Adam Clay has been there as an assistant, young guy. trying to turn things around. It's going to take a few years to get that program reestablished and get it back to where it was with Doug Henderson and some of the other great coaches who were there.
Southeast and Page, who do you like there? You like Page?
I like Page. I think Southeast's best chance in that game is to keep it close, maybe get a turnover or two, and try to ball control Page in the second half, maybe frustrate him a little bit. But if that doesn't happen, Page just has too much firepower.
What about this? Do you like your games, or would you like for your games to start at 7 o'clock or 7:30?
From a selfish professional standpoint, 7 o'clock all day. With the deadlines that we have for the print publication, that 7:30 start is a challenge, especially with all the spread offenses, all the high-scoring games, all the multiple plays. High school teams running 60, 70 plays. The games can take a while, and that's a challenge. And every time I'm on Twitter during a game and I see a game that I'm at hasn't started yet, and I'm already getting first quarter and early second quarter scores from Charlotte Mecklenburg and from the Triangle, I'm thinking, boy, that would be nice.
How about this game tomorrow night? Any thoughts? Your game is going to be Southeast and Page tomorrow night. At any time during the game tomorrow night, does your mind drift away toward Blacksburg, Virginia, Friday night football, NC State, and Virginia Tech?
A little bit. I mean, I understand why the colleges play on Friday nights. I understand that the money from ESPN, Fox, the networks is too much to pass up. But it's tough to see televised college football on Friday nights and the impact that it can have on the high school gates. I think, the fans of a particular high school are going to be there. It's where you may lose some casual fans. It would be worse for the schools around here if that game was in Raleigh instead of in Blacksburg, because then you've got more people going over to tailgate and all that, and alumni. This way the one great thing about technology is if they've got a smartphone, they may be able to watch that Virginia Tech NC State game at the Southeast Guilford Page game.
And you're seeing this day and time, they show these TV games to be people in the stands. All they're doing is they're on their phones all night long.
And it's not just texting and all of that. It's watching another game.
Scores, yeah.
Yep. And getting scores, exactly. And the scores that you guys provide.
Joe, your grade tonight will be an A-. We give you an A, but you still got room for improvement. That's why I get these grades. A- tonight. Excellent job.
There's always room for improvement, Andy. Always. Thank you.
And you got it. If you need to, you need to grab your meal. It's still available for you.
Good deal. Thanks, Andy. Always a pleasure.
Enjoyed it.
Appreciate it.
And we're ready for our next guest. Don will be Justin Hartsfield. Mr. Hartsfield from Northeast Guilford next. On the right-hand side, they jumped in a booth back there on the right. Hit the restroom.